Good evening, all you people.
Welcome to the Abyss.
It's dark. It's spooky down here.
Just like my soul.
What are you drinking, Cleet?
I'm drinking a hazy IPA with a giant dragonfly on it. It's pretty neat.
Damn. What's the brewing company?
Big Sky Brewing Company from Montana. That's how you know it's good.
Big Sky.
Brewed in the middle of nowhere.
Well, I am drinking a beer from Roadhouse Brewing Co., and it's called Sublime Kush. It's a super heady IPA. And no, I don't think there's any marijuana in it. The can says, "This is what space smells like." So there you go. 7%. All right, folks. Well, thank you all for participating in the poll, for choosing our next series. It was a close call.
It was a clincher.
What? It was.
It was really.
It was clinching.
It was really
hardcore
clinching to the very end.
whole time. With 29 votes, the winner by one vote came out to be the Celebrity Conspiracy Theory Iceberg.
Yeah, we're going to get into some weird stuff. Kendrick Lamar, we're coming for you.
Oh, geez. He's going to write a rap song about us. They ain't like us. That whole thing is wild. But are we going to start that next week? Do you think?
Yeah, I'm sure we could. Let's jump into it.
Well, we'll get that started next week. Thanks for the votes, and we'll throw some polls on there as we go through, so you guys can help us decide what to cover as we go through. But Cleet, what are we talking about tonight?
This is actually a viewer submission from Modelo, and he asked for us to cover mysteries of the Pryor Mountain Little People.
Between you doing that, I have some horror stories from those hiking and some of the crazy experiences they've had.
Let's talk about the mysteries of the Pryor Mountain Little People. Nestled on the border of Montana and Wyoming lies the Pryor Mountain Range, a rugged and mysterious landscape rich with legends and history. Among the many tales that have emerged from this region, none are as enigmatic and captivating as the stories of the Pryor Mountain Little People. The Pryor Mountains, with their striking limestone formations, hidden caves, and expansive plateaus, have long been a place of wonder and reverence for the Native American tribes of the area, particularly the Crow Nation. These mountains are considered sacred ground, and among the many spiritual beliefs of the Crow is the existence of the Little People, or Nimergar. Anyways, so let's talk about their beliefs. According to the Crow oral tradition, the Little People are a race of small, humanoid beings who inhabit the remote areas of the Pryor Mountains. These beings are said to only be a few feet tall, but they are powerful and sometimes feared. Descriptions vary, but they often portray the Little People as having strong, muscular builds, with the ability to disappear and reappear at will. The Nimengar are believed to be the protectors of the land, endowed with supernatural abilities. They are known for their warrior spirit and are said to use bows and arrows, which they wield with deadly accuracy. While some tales depict them as benevolent protectors, others warn of their vengeful nature if disrespected or disturbed. The Little People are often described as having long hair, worn loose or in braids, and their clothing is made from animal hides and decorated with intricate beadwork and feathers. They are said to live in small, hidden communities, usually in caves or under rocky overhangs. Their society is structured with a strong emphasis on community and mutual aid. The Nimengar are nocturnal, preferring to move under the cover of darkness. They are skilled hunters and gatherers, with a deep knowledge of the local flora and fauna. Their diet consists of small game, fish, berries, and roots. Despite their small stature, they are incredibly strong and agile, capable of scaling cliffs and navigating the rugged terrain with ease. So, you want to jump into some stories?
Yeah, I want to hear some stories of these people.
The first one is called The Disappearing Hiker. In the late 1990s, Jacob, a seasoned hiker, set out on a solo expedition into the Pryor Mountains.
Not smart.
Known for his meticulous planning, he informed his friends of his exact route and the expected return date. When he failed to return after a week, his friends grew concerned and alerted the authorities. A search party was organized, scouring the rugged terrain. They found Jacob's campsite undisturbed, with his tent still pitched and supplies untouched. His map and compass were laid out, indicating that he had been planning his next move. However, there was no sign of Jacob himself. Nearby, the searchers discovered small, human-like footprints leading away from the campsite, deeper into the wilderness. These footprints were too small to be Jacob's, and seemed to appear and disappear in the dense underbrush. Despite extensive searches involving helicopters, dogs, and volunteers, Jacob was never found. Locals whispered that Jacob had ventured too close to the territory of the little people, who had taken him for unknown reasons. His disappearance remains a mystery, with the only clues being the small footprints that vanished as mysteriously as they appeared.
That's crazy. I mean, I'm gonna be honest. Like, if you went missing, right? If you're like, hey, I'm gonna go hiking, and I'm like, okay, cool. You're like, I'm gonna go alone. Here's where I'm gonna be. If I'm not back in a week, send help. And I come out and look for you, and I just see little footprints. I'm like, what the fuck happened here?
Did a baby pick him up and pull him away?
You just get ransacked by a bunch of children? A bunch of forest kids?
Danny DeVito, damn it!
Yeah, probably. That or Peter Dinklage. You watch Game of Thrones, right? You know the imp. They call him the imp in the show, so I said. Okay, so this first story is called Mind Blown. I'd hiked 15 miles to an alpine wilderness and just laid down for the night when a youngish guy in shorts and with no bag pops out and asked me if I have water. I, of course, shared my water, and he immediately said that he'd been hiking since yesterday. Apparently, he and his friend went way back and off the trail, skirting some cliffs along the way. Then he just says, half-jokingly, yeah, his brains are everywhere. I half-assed a laugh, but he was sending off a really deadly vibe. Not dangerous, just stone-cold shock. I asked him to clarify that last part and offered him some food and a cigarette. I also ordered him to sit down, but he didn't want to because he would lose his legs if he sat now. But I explained that he needed to sit a while. Long story short, his friend slipped and fell, and when he hit, his head popped, and then his body got wedged in a crevice. The guy I was talking to had spent all the previous day hiking around the cliff to find his friend, then had to hike out of the valley, up the ridge, and down again, all on Talus Slope-Off Trail. He was absolutely shredded, skinned, torn up. He was begging me to come with him to help get his friend out of the hills. That's the part that really stuck with me. He got up and was about 3 feet into the bush when I grabbed him gently and said, "Hey, I got a phone. Let's see if the emergency service works." Somehow it did, and I have zero idea how, technically or otherwise. We were standing in a glacial cratered alpine lake 15 miles from the trailhead. I got rescue up there, and man, I was super impressed with their response. Within a few hours, the first group of volunteers were passing my camp. These guys all looked like supermen, and they were. All night afterwards, a constant stream of rescue volunteers. I stayed at camp and made a comfy spot for them to rest on the way down. They had to wait up there in white-out conditions for 6 nights, but rather than leave, they kept a constant vigil over the hiker's dead body. When the weather broke, a chopper flew in and took them all out. I've never been so deeply moved and impressed with that kind of selflessness in something we regard as a hobby or a sport. Words that take away the very definition or the very dangerous nature of it. Read all these stories and it seems most are deaths by slip and fall. Happens too easy. Don't take the chance with your life. Can you imagine someone just comes out and is like, yeah, his brains are all over, man. You gotta help me. I'd be like, what the fuck you say?
Yeah, we're gonna leave.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go back this way, actually. Okay, so this story is called A Wendigo? A Wendigo? About 7 years ago, I was on a backpacking trip with 3 friends. One was a ranger, the rest of us bio and botany nerds. And all 4 of us saw something we still cannot explain. Day 1 went off without a hitch. It was a bit long and a lot of elevation gain, but nonetheless we set up camp and heated beans and rice under what was one of the clearest summer skies I can remember. This is up in Washington, and the night sky from the mountains is just unreal. Day 2 was different. All 4 of us awoke shortly before dusk to a shrill scream. Not super uncommon. Most of us are pretty seasoned hikers, campers, backpackers. The sound of something getting killed is pretty universal. None of us could quite make it out. If I remember correctly, we assumed it was a coyote, that familiar yelp. Anyways, it was pretty close, which is probably why it woke all of us up. So we started scoping out a small radius around the campsite. We found what looked like somebody had put a bomb in some kind of animal. No evidence of an actual explosive. I'm just trying to give you the same picture that I have in my head. A totally indecipherable heap of flesh and fur. Probably about the size of a German shepherd. Similar fur coloration, too. We discussed how odd it was for a bit, then decided, more or less, what are you going to do about it? And we moved on. Best explanation was something tore into it and bailed, maybe by the sound of us waking up. Day 3. Did you see that? We're winding down from a fairly short day of hiking, tired from the past 2 days. I remember us joking about being old farts now and not being able to hustle like we could a few years prior. The sun was just making its way down over the tree line while we busted out the whiskey and started boiling a pot of water for more beans and rice. Hell yeah. Whiskey and beans, buddy. I'll never forget this moment as long as I live. One of our crew was just launching into a story about his ex, and it went something like this. Yeah, so she's just about the worst possible kind of... He gets cut off by a loud pop, which we all unanimously recognized and described as a tree's last leg snapping before it falls. We're all standing now, scanning the tree line. We're in a small clearing aside from the single large tree we're next to. A few minutes go by without a sound. Nothing. Then we start hearing the forest life making noise again, mostly birds doing their thing. We all settle back in, presuming the tree wound up leaning up against another tree instead of hitting the forest floor. Sounded pretty close, but there aren't too many trees that we need to be concerned about. Then another wail, like the one we heard on the first night, except more distant. Though I never sensed it, one of the crew says it sounded like it came from a cave, kind of like it echoed. So we go looking for a cave in that general direction. We search for roughly 45 minutes before one of us suggests that we just head back, as we're going to be out of sunlight soon. More importantly, it's starting to get dark and we're a little ways from the safety of our tents. We never find anything like a cave or something that would cause that kind of reverb, or any kind of body. Heading back towards the clearing, our campsite from the woods, something catches a friend's eye. Did you see that? He's pointing across the clearing about 9 o'clock. We're taking a direct path, so our campsite is dead ahead at noon, or at 12. We're all looking in that direction, scanning the tree line. Where? What? Dude, I'm telling you, there was a person right there, just beyond camp. He's visibly shaken by it, and it's pretty obvious that he isn't fooling around, or thought he could be mistaken. We're nowhere near a road or town, and even the nearest trail is miles away. A handful of times I've run into other backpackers in a similar way, people checking out our campground, heading in the direction of your fire, so the rest of us had a pretty open, let's go check it out mentality. But the friend who saw the figure suggests that we all take a knee and wait while we hide in the tree line's cover. So there we are, kneeling in the brush, staring out at our campsite from the other side of the clearing, when we all unanimously see a figure start to move against the brush from 9 to 8 to 7, counterclockwise. Since we're at effectively 6 o'clock, this becomes increasingly unsettling. I remember noting our ranger buddy readying his rifle, and another friend putting a hand on his knife. We're all feeling the same uneasiness now. I say we saw a figure, but really we could just hear and occasionally see the brush moving in that area. Ranger buddy declares it has to be a bear, the original spotter whispering his argument about it standing like a person. Either way, we decide getting into the clearing and making our presence known was the best choice. We either need to scare the bear off or confront this person, so we all stand up and jog into the clearing shouting, "Hey, bear!" Nothing happens. Nothing at all. Now we're all standing in the middle of the clearing, somewhere about halfway between our 6 o'clock position and our camp, just waiting for something to happen. We're about 20 minutes away from total darkness when there's another wail from 4 o'clock, but our focus is towards 7. I whirl around before realizing one of us was already looking that way, and his face is totally pale. Then I see it too. We all do. There's the silhouette of a tall man leaning over something else, facing away from us, and then he clearly rests on one knee before turning to look our way. Our ranger buddy has his rifle in air. "Hey, who the fuck is over there?" He's about to lay into him for hunting when the figure comes to a full stand. It's hard to gauge, probably about 6 foot, and then takes off away from us. And I don't mean like a man scrambling to run away or a bear bounding off into the brush. This is more like Usain Bolt if he were born and raised in the mountains. Like never in my life have I ever seen anything like it. And I'm almost embarrassed to admit it. My first reaction was a ghost. After a pretty long wait and arguing over what it was and what we should do, we swing back to camp to grab a few flashlights and our lamp. We make our way over to where the figure was leaning, and it's another mound of flesh. Without getting too detailed, this time some unmistakable fox paws are intermixed. Again, it looks like it was exploded open and the meat was eaten on the spot, not harvested like a hunter. You probably wouldn't be surprised to hear that we don't sleep much that night. We make jokes about encountering Sasquatch out there. I've never been a spiritual man, and I'm still not, but it's very difficult to shake the inhuman yet human supernatural nature of the way it looked and moved. None of us could make out any kind of clothing that would break up its silhouette. Not to mention, I've never personally seen something quite kill like that. The closest thing I've ever seen is a deer carcass post-bear, in the time of year that would have made it very hungry and aggressive, which wouldn't have been during our summer hike. What gets me is we heard the same shrill wails 3 times, and the distance between our day 2 site and our day 3 site was close to 10 miles, meaning we were on the same general game trail as it was, or it was following us. Spooky. What do you think?
Sounds like a Wendigo, man. Sounds like a Wendigo.
Just crazy that the animals were imploded. Okay, back to you, buddy.
Back to the little people. All right. The legend of the Pryor Mountain Little People gained wider attention in the 19th and early 20th century. Early European settlers and explorers reported strange sightings and encounters that seemed to confirm the Native American stories. Ranchers would speak of hearing eerie laughter in the night, and hunters claimed to have seen small, shadowy figures darting through the underbrush. In 1932, an astonishing discovery was made that seemed to lend credence to these tales. While exploring a cave in the Pryor Mountains of Wyoming, which is not far from Pryor Mountains, 2 prospectors stumbled upon a small, mummified figure. This Pryor Mountain mummy stood only 14 inches tall and had a well-preserved humanoid appearance. The mummy was examined by various scientists and anthropologists, some of whom suggested it could be a prehistoric infant, while others speculated it might indeed be a representative of the legendary Little People. Let's go into modern explorations and theories. Today, the legend of the Pryor Mountain Little People continues to intrigue both locals and visitors. Paranormal investigators and cryptozoologists have taken up the search, using modern technology to explore the remote and rugged terrain. While no definitive evidence has been found, the mysterious aura of the Pryor Mountains remain. Some researchers theorize that the Little People legend could have been rooted in the discovery of pygmy human remains or an unknown species of hominid that once inhabited the area. Others suggest that the stories are a blend of myth and cultural memory passed down through generations to explain unexplainable phenomena. All right, let's get into some more stories. Let's talk about the missing pets.
Not the pets.
Tom, a rancher living near the Pryor Mountains, began noticing strange behavior in his livestock in the summer of 2005. His animals were often found huddled together, clearly terrified and refusing to venture out to graze. Over the course of a few weeks, several of his dogs and cats went missing without a trace. One night, determined to uncover the cause of his animals' distress, Tom stayed up to keep watch. Around midnight, he saw small figures, no more than 3 feet tall, moving silently through his yard. They moved with unnatural speed and agility, almost blending into the shadows. Tom shone his flashlight on them, and they vanished into the darkness. The next morning, he found his favorite dog mutilated, its limbs arranged in a peculiar and gruesome pattern. Deeply disturbed, Tom sought the help from his neighbors, who reluctantly told him about the little people and their penchant for causing mischief and harm. Convinced that the little people were responsible for the strange occurrences and fearing for his safety, Tom decided to move away. The livestock and pet disappearances ceased, but the eerie memory of those small, shadowy figures remained etched in his mind. Right, now let's talk about the vanishing child. In the early 1980s, a young girl named Emily went missing while she was playing near her family's cabin in the Pryor Mountains. Her parents, frantic with worry, organized a search party involving friends, neighbors, and local authorities. They scoured the area for days, calling out Emily's name and searching every possible hiding spot. Despite their efforts, no trace of Emily was found. Weeks turned into months, and hope dwindled. One evening, Emily's mother, despondent and unable to sleep, wandered near the edge of the forest. Suddenly, she heard a faint voice calling her name. It was Emily's voice, unmistakable and clear. She followed the voice deep into the woods, calling out for her daughter. As she ventured further, she found small footprints leading deeper into the forest. The footprints were tiny, like those of a child, but they seemed to disappear and reappear, leading her in circles. Exhausted and heartbroken, she returned home, convinced that Emily had been taken by the little people, who sometimes lure children away for unknown purposes. Despite multiple searches and the passage of time, Emily was never found. Her disappearance remains one of the many unsolved mysteries linked to the Pryor Mountains, with many believing she was taken by the elusive little people.
Good Lord.
So let's jump into some more eyewitness accounts. Over the years, numerous eyewitness accounts have surfaced, adding to the mystique of the little people. One such account comes from a local rancher named John Peterson, who, in the 1970s, claimed to have encountered a small humanoid figure while tending to his cattle. According to Peterson, the figure was about 3 feet tall, with long, dark hair and piercing eyes. It vanished into the underbrush before he could get a closer look. Another intriguing account comes from a group of hitchhikers who, in the late 1990s, reported seeing tiny footprints in the snow near one of the Pryor Mountain caves. The footprints, measuring only a few inches in length, appeared to be those of a barefoot human. The hikers followed the tracks to the mouth of the cave, where they abruptly ended. Let's go to another. In the summer of 1985, a family camping near the Pryor Mountains reported a series of unusual events. The Patterson family, while enjoying a night under the stars, heard what they described as high-pitched giggles coming from the forest.
I mean, look, it's kind of funny, but at the same time, can you truly imagine you're just hiking, you're camping, and you just hear fucking giggling? Dude, like that, I don't care who you are, that's freaky. Because you're not expecting to hear giggling when you're just hiking. It's like,
All right. When they shone their flashlights into the trees, they caught glimpses of a small, quick-moving figures that seemed to disappear as soon as they were illuminated. The family cut their trip short, spooked by the inexplicable happenings. In 2003, a wildlife photographer named Laura Thompson had an unexpected encounter while setting up a camera trap near a known wildlife corridor in the Pryor Mountains. Reviewing the footage later, she was astonished to find images of tiny humanoid figure inspecting her equipment. The figure appeared curious, but quickly darted out of frame. Thompson, a seasoned professional, insisted the footage was genuine and unaltered. In 2010, a fisherman named Greg Harmon reported an eerie experience while fishing in a remote stream in the Pryor Mountains. As he quietly fished, he noticed movement on the opposite bank. Looking closer, he saw several small figures watching him from behind the rocks. They appeared to be communicating with each other in a language he couldn't understand. When he tried to approach, they vanished into the undergrowth without a trace. These are good stories, man. They're good. In 2015, a local historian named Emily Jackson was exploring old Crow burial sites in the Pryor Mountains when she noticed something peculiar. While documenting the site, she found what appeared to be a tiny, hand-carved stone tool buried alongside regular-sized artifacts. Jackson believes these tools were used by the Little People and sees them as an important part of the Crow heritage. In 2018, a couple, Mark and Linda Williams, were hiking in the Pryor Mountains when they had an unsettling encounter. As they paused to rest near a rocky outcrop, they saw what they initially thought were children playing amongst the rocks. However, on closer inspection, the figures were too small and moved with an unusual swift agility. The Williams reported seeing the figures vanish into a hidden crevice, leaving behind tiny footprints and a sense of awe and fear. In 2020, a park ranger named David Lewis was conducting a routine patrol in the Pryor Mountains when he heard rustling in the bushes nearby. Expecting to find a small animal, he was startled to see a tiny humanoid figure, no more than 2 feet tall, dart across the paths and disappear into the underbrush. Lewis, a seasoned ranger, reported the incident to his superiors, who advised him to keep the sighting confidential to avoid public panic. So, some fun stories, but let's move it back over to Britain.
It's crazy. Before we do that, what are your thoughts on this? Do you feel like that's a genuine thing, or like what would you...
Well, maybe...
What's your thoughts on it? Do you feel like there's like genuine little people in the Pryor Mountains?
I don't know, man. There seems to be a lot of different people that believe they have seen small people or seen traces of footprints of small people, which could potentially mean that there's something going on in those mountain ranges, man.
I can't believe the amount of stories you found with this. I didn't even know this was a thing. Okay, so this story is called Looney Bin in the Woods. I was a park ranger on a small island, the only year-round resident. Private boat access only with no bridge or ferries. It became crowded in summer, but we'd empty it out completely when the weather turned. I loved the off-season, with 400 acres all to myself. No phone, no internet. Sometimes, though, I would get bored. I'd go out at night without a flashlight and challenge myself to hike the entire island in the dark. That seems like a really weird thing to do.
Sounds exciting, man.
You know what sounds good tonight? I'm just going to go out without a flashlight and just fucking walk.
It's how you feel alive, man.
I feel so alive. There was moonlight to navigate by, but there was also a stretch of the main trail that passed through the oldest trees on the island, where I'd be plunged into total darkness. I was in the old forest one night when I heard something behind me. I turned. Nothing there. Turned back and something brushed my face. My stomach dropped and I swung my fist into something. I ran full tilt for 100 yards, stomping in my big old stupid boots with my gun belt bouncing up and down, my vest riding up to saw my throat. I stopped and bent over with a stitch in my side and started laughing. I held up my hand in front of my eyes and ran my fingers over the prickled cut from the branch that I'd just punched. Through the spread fingers of my injured hand, I saw a smear of bright white off trail ahead. I figured it was one of the small herd of white-rumped deer the locals wrongly referred to as palominos, but it was moved up a side trail before I could get a better look. I got my breath under control and I followed it. 100 feet up the side trail, it split again and I could hear something moving through the underbrush, just past the fork and to the right. I crouched as I made my way to the fork and stayed low to keep quiet and unseen. The trail gains elevation as it nears the center of the island, where the trees spread out and the moon lights things up. I heard a sharp bark and then froze, then crept forwards a few feet. I reached the fork and was straining to see ahead when I heard the crunch and crack of something in the brush behind me. I spun and saw a pale man, 6 foot or taller with dark hair, wearing a bright white t-shirt, about 30 feet from me. He gave me a lunatic grin, barked again, a hard, sharp ha, then turned and ran off into the woods.
Furry people are weird, man.
Yeah. I stood still, scanning the trees, my hand on my gun. After not hearing anything for a few moments, I backtracked my way to the main trail, then, terrified, sped-walked all the way back to my cabin. I hiked the exterior again that night with a flashlight this time and checked the coast for evidence of any visitor, boater, or wayward traveler. Nothing. I got up early morning and in the light of day did the same thing with the same result. I don't know who or what it could have been. The way he was running around off-trail convinced me that he knew the island very well, better than me for sure, and that he was hiding out somewhere. But I never found any evidence of a secret lair, and I never saw him again.
Wow. It's pretty scary, man.
Spooky.
Could have just been a furry, though.
Probably. He's like, you interrupted our furry session. You're an ex-furry, aren't you?
Oh, man. Fuck you, dude. Fuck you.
You're like, no, man.
How dare you?
You used to do furry things. I know you.
I never did a furry thing, man. I don't know what you're talking about. Go put on your dog suit. You go approach, the Cookie Monster and things
I go Kermit the Frog, buddy.
Oh, yeah.
It's Kermit the Frog.
Chase people in the park.
It's not furries, it's slime. My last story before we finish off with the little people of Pryor Mountains. This one's called What Was That? My family is very outdoorsy, and every year we go to what we call hunting camp. This involves my brother, my dad, myself, and close family friends. There's usually about 15 guys. We've been going to the same woods that my father and his dad went to over 30 years ago and even camp in the same spot in Michigan. This is a spot tucked deep into the woods and is by no means a sanctioned campground. This area we camp by almost borders right up to the Native American land given to the tribes by the state. Now, I've read enough of these stories, and I'm generally pretty skeptical of the more far-fetched ones, but those who know the area can verify this, or you can Google it. For our camp, we set up a huge old canvas army tent that sleeps 15 guys in cots. My brother and I stopped sleeping in that tent and would set up our own individual tents because amongst the other guys, there is one that is an unbelievably loud sleeper. Sounds like you. This particular night happened 4 to 5 years ago, and it's the reason I've rejoined the group in the larger tent. Totally worth listening to the snoring to not experience this ever again. So generally our days go as follows. Hunt in the morning, come back for lunch, go back out for the afternoon hunt. Then at night you eat dinner and get super wasted.
Yeah.
We're up pretty late doing this. We're up pretty late doing this, and when people get too drunk or tired, they peel off from the group and go to sleep. On this night, probably about 1 a.m., there's a few of us left by the fire, and we finally decide to call it quits for the night. I'm a notoriously light sleeper, and it's difficult for me to even fall asleep. As I laid there trying my best to drift off and ignore the unexplainable noises you hear in the woods late at night, I heard one that simply cannot be ignored. My heart begins to race. Off in the distance in the woods, a crunching noise grew louder and louder. Sounded just like footsteps, a crunch, crunch, crunch sound as it stepped over the fallen leaves and twigs. Now, I'm not inexperienced when it comes to noises in the woods. I've done enough hunting and camping to know the sound of small critters running around or leaves and sticks falling. This was clearly the noise of footsteps walking through the woods, and on this night there was no wind, just the crunching noise that sounded like it was coming right towards me. It got much louder and clearer until it sounded like it was right outside my tent. It just stopped, and I could hear nothing else. At this point, I started panicking, and I had a few options. I screamed for help at the risk of it being nothing and looking like a huge weenie once everyone wakes up, or I lay there and try and ignore and go to sleep. I go out there and see for myself. I choose option 3. Quickly jumped out of my bag and scrambled to get out of the tent, ready to take on whatever might be waiting for me. But by the time I was out there, it was nothing. I stood just outside my tent with my flashlight, looking through the dark forest, trying to spot anything that could have been the cause of the noise. Couldn't find a thing. Unhappily, I was forced to go back into my tent and to sleep, not knowing what was out there. Now, the really creepy part was the next morning. My dad asked a buddy, Jim, what he was doing by the fire last night all by himself. Jim said that he was never out there and was in the tent the entire night. My dad explained that he got up in the middle of the night to take a piss, and Jim was just sitting by the fire alone. When he asked him what he was doing, he just continued to stare into the fire, saying nothing. My dad didn't think too much of it and just went back to bed.
That's normal, just old Jim.
Yeah, he's just contemplating life and all of his poor decisions. That's when I told them what happened to me, but there wasn't really anything we could do to explain any of it, so we brushed it off. This is exactly how the events happened, with no exaggeration. Neither my dad nor Jim had any reason to make any of it up, and I absolutely believe them. Obviously, goat men or wendigos come to mind, especially because of the proximity to the Indian land, but I'm not a superstitious person. We still camp in that very same spot every year, but like I said, it's with everyone else in the big tent. I don't know, man. It's kind of spooky.
Camping in the woods can be scary. All right. Let's go back to the little people. The scientific community has approached the legend of the Pryor Mountains little people with skepticism, but also with curiosity. Anthropologists and archaeologists have conducted numerous excavations in the area, searching for evidence that might support the existence of the little people. While no definitive proof has been found, some intriguing artifacts have been unearthed, including tiny tools,
little hammer and chisel, ding, ding.
And
it's like a children's play set,
and weapons that suggest the presence of a small-statured population. In recent years, advances in DNA analysis have offered new avenues for exploration. Scientists have begun testing the remains of the Pryor Mountain mummy and other similar findings, hoping to uncover genetic evidence that could shed light on the origins of these mysterious beings. Preliminary results have been inconclusive, but researchers remain hopeful that further studies will provide answers. As for the cultural significance, for the Crow Nation and other Native American tribes, the little people are more than just a legend. They are a vital part of their spiritual and cultural heritage. The stories of the Nimingar are often used to impart moral lessons emphasizing respect for nature and the unseen forces that inhabit the world around us. The Crow believe that the little people can bring good, fortune, or misfortune depending on how they are treated. Offerings for food and small trinkets are sometimes left at sacred sites in the Pryor Mountains, as a sign of respect and to seek the favor of the little people. These rituals are a testament to the enduring power of the legends and the deep connections between the Crow and their ancestral lands. So let's jump into a scary story, huh? This one is called The Harrowing Night of the Campers. In the fall of 1994, a group of friends decided to camp in the Pryor Mountains to experience the region's natural beauty and perhaps catch a glimpse of the legendary little people. The group consisted of 5 experienced hikers: Michael, Sarah, Tom, Emily, and Jack. They set up camp near the remote part of the mountains, far from any marked trails or other campers. On the second night of their stay, as the group sat around the fire, they began to hear faint, high-pitched giggles coming from the darkness. At first, they dismissed the sounds as the wind or distant animals, but the laughter grew louder and more distinct. Michael, feeling a chill run down his spine, decided to investigate, armed with a flashlight. He ventured into the trees, his friends reluctantly following behind. As they moved deeper into the forest, the laughter seemed to surround them, echoing from all directions. Suddenly, Sarah screamed and pointed at a small, shadowy figure darting between the trees. Panic set in as more figures appeared, their eyes glowing eerily in the flashlight's beam. The campers realized that they were surrounded. Tom, trying to maintain his composure, suggested they return to the camp immediately as they turned to leave. Emily tripped over a small, jagged rock, cutting her leg. The blood seemed to incite the little people, their laughter turning into a menacing cacophony. The group hurriedly helped Emily up and sprinted back to their campsite. Upon reaching the camp, they found their gear scattered and their supplies ransacked. The tent was torn and their food was gone. Desperate to escape, they grabbed what they could and made their way to the car, which was parked a mile away. The eerie giggles and rustling in the underbush continued to haunt them as they moved, fear gripping their hearts with every step. The path back to the car seemed to stretch on endlessly, the darkness closing in around them. Jack, who was leading the way, suddenly stopped. He whispered that he saw something blocking the path. Squinting into the gloom, they saw a group of small figures standing their way, with their eyes glowing with tiny embers in the night. Realizing there was no turning back, Michael, the de facto leader, decided that they would have to push through. He picked up a fallen branch and brandished it as the makeshift weapon. The group moved forward cautiously, their breaths shallow and their hearts pounding as they neared the figures. The little people scattered, disappearing into the shadows with unsettling speed.
The fuck is this? Oh my god.
Finally, reaching the car, they piled in, their hands shaking as they fumbled with the keys. As the engine roared to life, they sped down the mountain, not daring to look back. The giggles faded into the distance, but the sense of unease lingered.
What's being chased by giggles? What the fuck is this? Willy Wonka's torture house? Jesus fuck, dude.
Once safely home, the group shared their story with friends and family, but most dismissed it as an overactive imagination or a prank gone wrong. However, the fear and trauma they experienced were real. Sarah had reoccurring nightmares of glowing eyes watching her from the darkness, and Michael developed an acute fear of the forest. Emily, the most injured from the encounter, decided to research the Pryor Mountain Little People further. She spoke with Crow elders who listened solemnly to her tale. They confirmed that the Little People could be vengeful when their territory was encroached upon, or if they felt disrespected. They advised Emily to perform a traditional offering ceremony to appease the spirits and seek forgiveness. Emily followed their guidance, leaving small gifts of food and handmade trinkets in the Pryor Mountains. She reported a sense of peace afterward, though the memory of the harrowing night never left her. So we'll wrap this up. The Pryor Mountain Little People remain one of North America's most enduring mysteries, or a genuine cryptozoological phenomenon. The tales of these elusive beings continue to captivate the imagination. As long as the winds whisper through the canyons and the shadows dance among the rocks, the legend of the Little People will live on. A testament to the rich tapestry of human belief and the enduring allure of the unknown. The Pryor Mountains, with their ancient secrets and timeless beauty, continue to be a place of wonder and mystery. The Little People, whether real or imagined, embody the spirit of these wild and untamed lands, reminding us that some mysteries are best left unsolved and that the world still holds many secrets waiting to be discovered. The story of the campers serve as a chilling reminder that some legends are rooted in truths that we may never fully understand, and that respect for the unknown can sometimes be a matter of survival. Cue in music.
Well, Jesus. Man. Man. I don't know what. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for the viewer submission, Modelo time. Thank you for the viewer submission. We definitely appreciate it. And if you yourself would like us to cover a specific topic or story, enter theabysspod@gmail.com. Is the best way to get a hold of us. So we're going to wrap up tonight. A huge shout out to the paid supporters of the show: Modelo Time, Great Britain, Curtis and Laura, Mothman, Devin, Lara, Conklin family, and Lou. Thank you very much for your continued support of the show. And if you yourself would like to support the show, please click the link below and you can choose any number of tier. Any dollar helps us out as we continue to grow and do more exciting things. We have a lot of travel that we want to do, especially as fall is approaching.
If you're listening to us on YouTube, please like, share, and subscribe, as it really helps us get us out there. And as always, thank you for entering the abyss.
Until next time.